Joining us now, he's been the head coach at Drake since 2003. And of course, has been a perennial conference championship contender. Has won the conference championship in the Missouri Valley. He's been to the NCAA tournament. He knows the state of Iowa really well. I speak of Rich Calvert, who makes his In the Circle debut. Coach, how you doing?
I am fantastic here. It's a beautiful day here in Des Moines, and I love the fall here in the Midwest. It's some of the best weather we get all year. So looking forward to getting our fall season kicked off here this Thursday against Kirkwood Community College, and see what we look like, and hopefully we continue to get better.
Well, let's talk about that. What is it about the state of Iowa? All the schools start early. Describe what's it like to be in Iowa at this time of year. I know because the high school is big up there. Describe what softball is like in Iowa.
It's one of a kind in a sense when it comes to the high school portion of our state. We're the only state in the union that has softball in the summer, and it's a huge tradition. The state tournament is unlike any other state tournament you'll ever be at. Great crowds, just a great festive atmosphere, and that's to me is the ultimate of playing team sports, is to be able to get to a state tournament and compete for a state championship, playing with your best friends and your peers that you've known for years. And I know, and the state of Iowa takes pride in that. And I think that if you look at the programs across the state, not only the Division Ones, but the one Division Two school we have, the mini Division Threes and the junior colleges, all of them compete very well in their respective divisions, and they have a lot of Iowa high school players that play for their programs. And so to me, it's, we're going to start there when it comes to looking at players for our program, because there's some really good players in the state of Iowa. Our job here is to try to keep those really, really good players from not leaving the state. And, sometimes that becomes harder and harder because the word has gotten out that, we have some pretty good talent here. We may not have the numbers that some of the other states have in terms of just really good prospects, in terms of a fair number of them, but we got some good ones that could hold their own against anybody.
Now, one of the great premier events in the fall that we didn't get to do last year, but it's been a tradition in the state of Iowa, is the Big Four Classic. It will take place October 1st through the 3rd, where obviously you take part into that, as well as Northern Iowa, and Iowa State. Tell me about that. What's it like to be a part of that Big Four Classic in the fall? We don't see that normally in fall ball in the other states, but we do here. This has been a tradition. How did it all come about? What's it like to be a part of this?
Well, I would say that I hope I have some responsibility in getting this thing started. Back when I was an assistant at University of Iowa, I don't even know, it might be like year 23, 24 in terms of putting this on. And I know Gayle Blevins, who was the head coach at the time at the University of Iowa, we got together and said, hey, you know what, this might be a nice little thing to do, kind of a culminating experience for our fall season. And, everybody was on board, and we've had it every year except for obviously last year. And it's a nice way to culminate the end of the fall season. It's nice to see some of the other teams, what their freshmen are like. It's great for the state in terms of high school recruits that could get out and watch us. There's a lot of respect across the three other schools that each team brings. The coaches all know each other very well and respect each other very well. So it's a neat atmosphere. We rotate it every 4 years. Northern Iowa is the host this year. They were supposed to host last year, but unfortunately that wasn't able to take place. And so it's just a neat little event that we're able to play out over a couple days. It's free substitution, so sometimes we keep score. We always keep score in our heads, but sometimes we keep score on the scoreboard. But it's just a nice way to kind of see the work you've put in the fall, what else you have to do to get better, because you're playing like versus like in terms of, where are you at this point in the season? And it kind of lets you measure up against some of those schools that you're going to be facing come springtime.
It's really awesome. And what's so cool, because you all play each other in the regular season, but yet you play in the fall. And I just get a sense in talking to you and talking to all the coaches, there's a healthy respect. And there's a sense, I feel like you all have, like, you feel like you all have a responsibility to the state of Iowa to represent and to, hey, let's make sure we all play for the good of the state of Iowa. Because I think you all feel that you have, I always feel like you all have a chip on your shoulder to say, hey, everybody talks about some of the other states when it comes to softball, but this state is just as good as any. And we have a lot of pride in this state.
We do. And, the key is for all of us to continue to get better and stay on top. We had a great run here a couple of years ago before COVID hit in terms of where our program was at. We took a little bit of a dip last year, but Iowa State's picked it up. Northern Iowa has picked it up. Iowa is up and comer. So I think the quality of softball across all four schools right now might be the best we've had it in a long, long, long time. And I think that's the mark of the coaches that are in place at these other schools. I think, but it's the talent that we have in the state of Iowa. Obviously, we bring in a couple from outside the state just to kind of complement those that are in the state. And so I think right now, Iowa softball in terms of the Division I programs are probably the best they've been across the board. And, our job is just to try to keep getting better.
Let's talk about your team now as you're entering fall ball here, and what are you got a lot of players coming back. I know this past year didn't go as well as you would have liked, but it was such a unique year. You didn't have a fall last year, as you mentioned, which probably hurt kind of the growth of your team last year because the last couple of years you've kind of had to rebuild it up after, as we'll talk about later, the great run you had in 18 and 19 with a special player that we'll talk about. But how do you feel about this group coming back and some of the newcomers this year? How do you feel about this year's team going in?
Every year is a new exciting year because there's so many unknowns. Last year, like you said, was not a typical year that we've had at Drake in a while. Some of that was due to personnel change. Some of it was due to the situation that all schools were put in terms of not having a fall season. And our fall season is critical to us in terms of just getting that, you can only scrimmage yourself so much. And we did a lot of that last year, and it kind of became stale as we moved through what we called an abbreviated fall season. We really didn't have individuals last year just because of how things were laid out for us on our campus. And so we didn't get our normal fall. And I really think that hurt us as a team as we moved into the spring. Bottom line from last year, pitching is still the name of the game. I always say if you have the best pitcher, you got a good chance to win every game. Last year, uncharacteristic, our pitching wasn't at the level that we had seen in numerous years. And so, it's hard, it puts a lot of pressure on the offense. So we know we have the capability of having really good pitching here. It just was one of those years where it just, for some reason, it kind of snowballed on us. And, towards the end of the year, it did get better, but I'm hoping that a year under our belt, we've added a couple new pitchers, hopefully that they could help us in the progress moving forward. But, we do have still a relatively young squad. The other thing that if I could throw in there, we were pretty much one of the only schools in the country that didn't have a super senior last year. All of our seniors ended up going on to either medical school or postgraduate work. And, we lost three really good ones that have been in a lot of games for us over the last couple of years. So, they were missed. But I'm excited about this year. We have three that are so-called super seniors that decided to go ahead and take that extra year of eligibility. And, one is Nicole Timmons, who has been a mainstay for us for a couple of years. She would be the first to tell you she had a little bit of a down year last year for her. And hopefully she'll bounce back. Macy Johnson in center field has been a mainstay for us and had an incredible year last year in terms of what she did. So, she's going to be anchoring the outfield as she comes back. And then we also have Libby Ryan, who is a very dynamic player, and you could put her on basically in any position on the field. Not sure exactly where she's going to end up, but she'll probably end up in the middle of the infield somewhere. But she'll bat lead off, and Macy will bat second for us. I like our 1-2 punch. They're probably as good as there is in our conference, and if not the Midwest. And so we will lean heavily on those two. After that, it's a young quartet in a sense of, they have the most games played and been involved for the last 4 years. Probably our next player, looking down would be Emily Valtman, who had a really nice year. Started out really well as a freshman, and then obviously COVID hit, and then really picked it up. Started a little slow, but really picked it up towards the end of the season. So we're looking to have her bat in the middle of the order this coming year. Addie Leitner, who was a transfer from Louisiana University at mid-year, who we recruited and lost out, but then eventually she came back to us. She got off to a real good start, but kind of didn't finish as strong as she would have liked. I think I see a different presence in her so far in practice, and so hopefully she'll be a mainstay for us in the middle of the order. After that, we got a lot of competition, based upon some of our incoming freshmen along with some of our returning players. And so that's what the fall is about. I look at our team this year, we have 21 on our roster. That is, last year was our biggest roster we ever had at 17. And now all of a sudden we're adding 4 more. So the challenge for me this year is to try to figure out how those 21 are all going to fit and play vital roles in our program as we move through. Typically we carry around 14, 15 players. And, I think if you look across the country, you're looking at a lot of larger rosters than usual because of what COVID did in terms of extra years and, already having commitments and bigger freshman classes coming in. And I think that's going to be the case for a couple of years until we kind of get back to more of a normal type of season in terms of your recruiting classes. And, we're, eventually going to get back down to what is manageable for us and works well for us. But, in the meantime, we do have 21, and I think that are going to push each other and make us better. The other thing is we got 7 pitchers on the roster this year. And so with a couple of our Molly Hookstra, we redshirted last year. So she actually is a freshman in terms of a athletic year. And then we've added 2 other pitchers, and Paige Bedsworth, who comes from Missouri as the all-time leader in strikeouts in Missouri State history. And so we're looking forward to seeing what she could do. And then Jamie Scheck is another freshman from Cedar Rapids that comes in with some great past history. She's working through a couple of labrum tears, one on each hip, that she's had to battle the last couple of years. So she's kind of still in a work in progress. And, it may not be this year for us, but we're definitely looking for her down the road. But time will tell here. We'll see what the fall brings. And, the other person, if I could keep in terms of the pitching staff, is Mackenzie Hupke, who really came on towards the end of last year, and she just keeps getting better and better. As we move through. Our pitching coach and Tina D'Angelo does a great job in terms of just the development of our pitchers. And Mackenzie is one of those who I think is fitted nicely in terms of that developmental stage, and just excited to kind of see what she does here with a couple more years left.
Yeah, you mentioned that pitching staff, a lot of arms. Of course, your program is known for pitching. That's it's high standard at your program, going back to players like Brynne Dordel, 2008, Rebecca Schmidt, Jenna DeLong, and of course, most recently, Nicole Newman, which we'll get to. Talk about the standard. How did you develop the standard of that high-level pitching? And when you look at this staff, do you see 1 or 2 arms establishing themselves, or do you think this is by committee?
Let me answer the first question. Pitching wins. That. The teams at the World Series, yes, they could hit, but they all have good pitching. That's what got them there. Typically, the teams that finish at the top of the conference are going to have good pitching. And so, it's hard to win ball games 8-7 on a consistent basis. But the old rule is if you don't give up any runs, you can't lose a game. And so, you always try to build around pitching. I mean, I think that's the number one goal for any program. We've just been fortunate to identify some pitchers that would fit for our program. And it's not where they come in, it's where we think we could get them. And a point is Nicole Newman. She threw 59 miles an hour when she came in, and through hard work, through in the weight room, listening to the coaches. Obviously, her track record ended up being pretty good. And I think that's kind of the case with most of our pitchers that have come through the program. They're going to get better. Some of them take a little bit more time than others, but they all are going to have an impact on us. As far as, what I see this year, based upon last year, nobody really established themselves as the go-to pitcher. If things go well, I think you'll eventually see that. I think you'll see one or two that will kind of rise to the top, and they will probably get the majority of the innings come springtime. At least you hope that's the case. If not, it may be pitching by committee. I can throw one an inning and hope for the best. And, you think about in today's game with the advancement of hitters and how well they make adjustments throughout the game. I think unless you have that dominant pitcher, I think you're seeing more of a staff in terms of a starter, maybe go 2 times to the order, and then you have somebody come in that finishes. And the goal is to try to keep the hitter off balance. And that's what we may have to lean more upon this year. Time will tell. And, I do know that we have a brutal schedule to start out the season. And so it may be pitching by committee in terms of, hey, you go in and get me one time through the lineup and we'll bring somebody else in.
You mentioned Macy Johnson earlier. I want to give the audience an idea how great she's been for you. Last year, 444 average, 29 steals. The year before, 434. She had 13 steals. That was in a shortened 2020 season. What makes her such a great hitter, and what also one of the great one of your leaders?
Well, I think it starts with she could bunt. She's kind of working on her slapping a little bit. We don't use that very much just because she's basically running through the box as she's swinging, just from a normal standpoint. And so she gets the ball on the ground to the left side, it's going to be a bang, bang play. I think what you saw last year, and even if you go back to her freshman year, really, and her sophomore year, she drew a lot of walks. And that was an area that I think that's where hitting starts with. You have to understand the strike zone, and you have to understand what pitches that you hit well and what pitches you don't. And I think her adjustment over the last couple of years is understanding to be able to take that pitch and do something with it as opposed to getting yourself out. And, she's always going to be a tough out just because of her speed. I think she's got a lot more power than maybe what she displayed the last couple of years. And again, it's just trying to pick her pitches, but she's just a really dynamic player that, is a game changer. And you put her at the top of the lineup and, she's going to be a tough out. The thing is, she was probably a better player against the tougher teams that we played last year. If you look at the top 75 RPI teams that we played, her average was probably about 50 points higher than what it was in conference. And so she kind of rises to the occasion. And, it's nice that we're going to have her for one more year and hoping to see what she could do this year.
We're speaking with Drake head coach Rich Calvert here on In the Circle. What got you into coaching softball?
Oh gosh, that's a long time ago. I grew up playing, I started with playing boys fast pitch on a really good team in Central Illinois. And then there played on some men's teams, had some, there's a lot of former men's fast pitch players that, we're all about the same age and we all played against each other. Mike White down at Texas was obviously a competitor and faced him on a few times. John Barfell assistant or the pitching coach there at Oklahoma State. We were actually roommates for a year playing on the same men's team back in Bloomington, Illinois. Kenny Erickson was another one that I crossed paths a little bit. So there's some of those. Gordon Eakin from
Yeah.
Brigham Young is another one. So, we're kind of the old timers in the game. And, we were, really one of the first men coaches that kind of got over into women's fast pitch. And basically I was in college and walked into Melinda Fischer's office at Illinois State, who, bless her heart, is still going strong and has great programs. But that was, probably about 35 years ago that I did that. And I said, hey, I have a passion for this game, and got a little experience on the men's side and the boys' side, and think he could use some help. And she said, yep, I sure could. And so I feel really blessed to spent 6 years with her, having me grow up as I go through my college years, and then eventually as an undergrad to a grad to an assistant coach with her. And then from there I was at Ohio State for 3, and then from there I got the privilege to coach with Hall of Famer Gayle Blevins at University of Iowa. And we had some really good teams back there. And the fun thing is we did it with Iowa kids. And, we had a couple of kids sprinkled in from other states, but it was mainly Iowa kids. And, I've been, an assistant at 3 spots, and 2 of them have Hall of Famers that I was able to coach on. And then obviously been here for 20 years, and, he took over for a program that needed some help. And, we established ourselves by just trying to find the right fit for our program and for what, Drake University student athletes. And obviously it starts with the academics here. And, but we also have fun, and we try to win a few ball games. And we've been able to accomplish some really good things here in my 20 years that I've been here.
That is incredible, by the way. Tree, you've been fortunate working for Coach Fischer, Coach Blevins. Compare those 2 Hall of Famers. That's not many people could say they've done that. You've been a part of both of them, 2 legends. You mentioned your time with Coach Blevins. You were at Iowa 97 to 02. You got to 2 Women's College World Series appearances, Big Ten championships. That's pretty darn good to be with those 2. That's not too bad to start your coaching career.
Probably the biggest takeaway I take from Melinda Fischer was her organizational skills. Unbelievable. Down to a T. As a young whippersnapper, coming in, you thought everything about the game. And, I knew a fair amount, X's and O's, but it's all the stuff behind the scenes that you don't realize what takes place. I think Melinda was able to really give me a good boost in terms of understanding what it takes to have a good program and what you have to be able to do off the field. It's just not on the field. And then my time with Coach Blevins was about taking athletes that were really good in all sports and then taking them and mold them to be a really good softball player that never spent other than the summer playing softball. And so there was a lot of room for growth there, but just the ability to teach the game probably more in the mental side than the physical side. Coach Blevins, I think, was ahead of her time when it came to the mental side of the game and what she was able to do and instill that confidence in the players. And obviously it paid off with some pretty good teams over the years that she had there at University of Iowa. So I was able to take, what Melinda taught me and what Coach Blevins taught me and try to find a niche that worked best for me in terms of, kind of stealing a little bit from here, stealing a little bit from here. The other thing I think growing up, I had the fortunate to be around Coach Candrea at University of Arizona when I was younger. And obviously he was ahead of the game when it came to hitting. And so, every idea that I've ever had about the game, I've probably stolen from him. And so, and that's what, and then you kind of try to fit it in as far as what you want to do in your style. And, there might be a couple things that I can't come up with on my own, but most of the stuff I've kind of taken away from some of those great legends we've had in our game. And, hopefully one day I'll be able to pass on some of mine, that how I've done things here, and but Drake fits me well. I love the people here. I love the student athletes that I've been able to work with over the years, and hopefully I won't slow down anytime soon.
No, not at all. And let's talk about some of the players you've gotten to coach. Brynne Dordel, part of the 2008 team that made the NCAA tournament, was the first. At that time, Drake had a long drought as far as making the NCAA tournament. I think they hadn't made it since like '94, I believe, making it. What made her such a great player? And then obviously she's gone into coaching. That's the other thing that's common with you. You've had some players now that's gone into coaching. Brynne being at the highlight there. But what was it about her that stood out?
Perfection, which was a bad thing at times, but she was such a perfectionist at trying to do anything that she was in front of her. And she came in as a freshman. And, I think one of her first games that she threw was University of Michigan was ranked in the top 10, and it was our first game outside or something. And she went down there and just shut them down. And, lefty pitcher with a nice little rise ball, wasn't overpowering, but she had enough movement. And then she could throw a drop that would come inside and kind of get on your hands. And so she threw both well up and down, but she was, like I said, a perfectionist. She went out and just performed extremely well for us, especially her freshman year. Unfortunately, she had, injuries kind of caught up with her throughout her career, and it was probably never the same that she was that first couple years, just because from an injury standpoint. But she really kind of set the tone as far as our first pitcher that was kind of led us to the top of the conference. When I first got here, we had Jessica Hicks, who was a Iowa small school and did wonders for us. Unfortunately, I just didn't have enough around her when we first started out, and it expires other pitchers. But when Brynne got here, we had Jenna DeLong come in the exact same year. And, Jenna was one of those who was just, I looked at her from an athletic standpoint. I'm like, let's give her time and she's going to be really good. And then you think about it, Brynne kind of passed the torch to Jenna, and Jenna really started developing. And so Jenna really ended up kind of being our number one, and Brynne was our number two towards the end of, both of their time here, because they both came in together. And so, both of them kind of fed off of each other. And, Jenna was extremely talented, and like I said, that was probably the start of what we've been able to build up in terms of the pitching.
Yeah, DeLong was your 2011 Pitcher of the Year. Was tremendous. Then you had Rebecca Schmidt in 2015, who was your Pitcher of the Year. Describe Schmidt, because she was. It's funny. It's almost like they passed the baton. You got one great pitcher, and then a couple years later, you got another great pitcher developing there.
It's funny if I think back. Once Jenna and Brynne left, I had a local gal by the name of Jordan Gronwall. And Brynne, they kind of, actually Jordan was a freshman, so Jenna's and Brynne's senior year, and so Jordan didn't get a whole lot of pitching time. But then the next year, Rebecca Schmidt and Jordan, they were only two pitchers we had on staff that year. We had like 14 players, and we had two pitchers, and I'm like, okay, if you don't get hurt, we're going to be okay. And I think Jordan started probably 50 of our 50-some games that we played that year, and Becca Schmidt came in relief in probably 50 of those 55 games that year. And that year, Becca led the country in saves. And, we talked about it earlier in the conversation of having a staff. That was a staff. They were completely opposite of each other. So Jordan would probably get 2 times through the order. Then I'd bring Becca in, because they were so contrasting styles. Becca had this, what we call it's more of an off-speed rise, but I kind of call it a frisbee pitch because she'd throw it and just float, 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 and go up and out. And she would just mesmerize hitters with that pitch. And then, the year that she ended up being pitcher of the year, and again, all these dates are running into me, but Becca Schmidt, we played at University of Florida and University of Oklahoma back-to-back weekends. And, both of those teams were obviously really, they're still really good, but back then they were really good. And I'm trying to think of the pitcher that Florida had, but it might have been like Hannah Rogers or something. Well, Becca Schmidt just hit a bomb over their hitting area off of her. And then the next week, and we were at Oklahoma, she'd hit a home run off of the Ricketts kid. And so I'm like, that's not too bad for back-to-back weekends for a pitcher to do that. And so, and Becca would surprise you like that. She's just tall and lanky, and somehow she just swing and her barrel would be on time, and I'm playing and the ball would go. But yeah, Becca was a pleasure to coach. And and I look at all those pitchers, and again, it's a lot of that is what our former assistant and pitching coach, Nicole Wood, was able to do with Jenna and Brynne. And, it was funny. Nicole Wood played for me my first couple of years here. And then I brought her on as an assistant, and she was a catcher. And I said, hey, I want you to work with pitchers, because it was just me and her. I don't know anything about pitching other than, don't throw it down the middle, change speeds, get ahead, all the stuff that, but when it comes to technique, I kind of leave that for other people. I said, Nicole, I go, you're going to work with pitchers. I go, I'll help you out a little bit. We'll get through this. And Nicole will tell you a story that the first day I was down there and pitchers was there, and I was there for about 5 minutes. And I said, all right, you got this, and walked away and never came back. And so it's like, here you go. And she's like, I thought you were going to help me. I go, I did. I helped you for about the first 5 minutes. And I knew you had this. But her first year was Brynne Dordel and Jenna DeLong's first year. And so, that all just came together. And Nicole was, you hear some of your former catchers are some of your best pitching coaches, because obviously they were there and caught. And she did a great job. And then lo and behold, we were able to pick up my current pitching coach, Tina D'Angelo, as a volunteer. So 5 years later, and never missed a beat. And obviously what Tina was able to do with Becca Schmidt, and then obviously we're going to probably get to, I think, Nicole Newman here in terms of talking about her, but it's she's with our pitching staff, it's about development, but you got to find the right kid that you think can develop and get there.
Yeah, you mentioned that Newman kid. She was pretty good for you. First All-American in your program history. Led you, obviously, part of the 2018-2019 Missouri Valley and NCAA tournament appearances. Of course, 19 was the year she was an All-American. Led the nation in strikeouts. I think a 5 perfect games, set a record. And you got a lot of mainstream media that year because of her. ESPN would cover her. In fact, when you made the regional Minnesota, Amanda Scarborough covered that regional. That was a big deal. What made her so special that she is regarded as the greatest player in your program's history?
Well, I mentioned it earlier. Work ethic was huge. Never had an ego. Loved her teammates. Teammates loved her. They rallied around her. But she got better. She got better every single year. She developed new pitches every single year. And who knows what would have happened if she didn't have Tommy John surgery? That was. At some point we're like, is she ever going to be able to pitch again? Because when she had that, it was the first that we know of on a female pitcher that threw underhand. Obviously, it's secondhand nature in the baseball industry, but in softball, it was just unheard of. And so, we had a doctor here in Dr. Meyer who, had done Tommy John surgery, but never had obviously done one on a softball pitcher. And so, it was, it was some trying times because, here's somebody who had an injection earlier to try to help her after her freshman year into her sophomore year. And it worked obviously through her sophomore year, but as we get to the junior year, it didn't. And then unfortunately she had an incident down at Louisiana where she just strained it more and probably stretched that ligament a little bit more, tore it a little bit more. And obviously we had to shut her down for a month and had to make that decision. Okay. And she had to make that decision. And I know it was a tough decision on her. Does she go ahead and have Tommy John, which at that point had really never been done, or we just continue to rehab it and nurse it? And I think she, thankfully, and obviously we could look back now because it worked out extremely well. She had that surgery, and fortunately enough, we were able to medical redshirt her and get back that junior year. And that first year she was on a major pitch count. In terms of between myself, our pitching coach, and our trainer, it couldn't have gone any better in terms of how we built up throughout the season. Basically, the first couple of weekends, she didn't get more than 100 pitches over, and that was with a day off. So she was basically, we went 75 on Friday, we could only do 25 on Sunday. And we didn't, flinch from what we said. He said, nope, this is a long haul. And so it was nice that we had, some other pitchers and that could help us out. In terms of Nicole Timmons was around at that point in time. And we had an experienced group of people behind her that, put some offense on the board. So it wasn't like we had to completely rely on her. And then as we got to conference, basically we were able to start her one game on the Saturday game. And then Sunday, we, again, pitch count. We kind of started at 100, maybe went up to 110, 125. And, that was a year that we didn't lose a conference game till the last weekend. And it worked out perfectly. She did not. And then we got the conference tournament. We hosted. We were the number 1 seed. So that meant we started in the semifinals, and that's how our conference tournament works. And obviously she threw the first game, and we're like, okay, we're taking the reins off. She's going to throw back-to-back days for the first time all year. And we didn't put the pitch count on. We said, here we are. This is because right then we kind of a bubble team at that point in time. I don't know, and we didn't want to chance it. And so she came out and threw back-to-back days, and we became the first team in conference history to win a regular season and win a conference championship on your own field. That had never been done. And so obviously that worked out great. We got sent to Oregon, of all places, which was fine. Looking back, the experience that we got, the trip, the people of Oregon, the charter trip home was just phenomenal. And the experience that we got, I think, really helped us for the next year. And, I pulled a little switcheroo, and obviously Nicole Newman didn't start her first game with the regionals out there. I had Kaylee Smith, who was, I had 3 pitchers that really was a staff. And Kaylee Smith, and I'm sorry I failed to mention her earlier, how she came as a freshman. Nobody knew about her from California, could hit, but her pitch development in her senior year, she had 3 pitches at 3 different speeds. And it was a complete contrast of Nicole Newman and Nicole Timmons. And it was just how the staff was able to work together. And I started Kaylee against Brigham Young, and everybody's going, what's wrong with Nicole Newman? I said, you'll see her. You're just not going to see her just yet. Because, we knew we were trying to save her for Oregon. And, she held her own. We just didn't quite have the offense that we needed to get by. And, that year set up for the following year in terms of what Nicole was able to do. We kind of, at that point, we did manage her a little bit early on of her senior year and try not to overthrow her. And then obviously, but the biggest thing from her junior to senior year was she developed a little off-speed pitch that had some great movement on it. And plus she picked up a couple more miles an hour. She was throwing 68, 69. And then you throw an off-speed pitch and you throw a changeup that she had good command. And, she was going to be a tough person to square up on a day. And obviously the strikeouts came, the perfect games came. And I think if she could have had back that Georgia game, that very first game where we gave up a home run in the 7th and a home run in the 8th, I think, we would have had a unbelievable run. We did have an unbelievable run, but I know that kind of leaves a little sour taste in everybody's mouth, just how kind of our season ended.
You mentioned that 18 regional in Eugene, by the way. You got to the regional final. Of course, Gordon Eakin, BYU was in that regional. Mike White, you talked about earlier, so it was kind of fun. It was like a reunion with you guys. But you got to that regional final. Then that 19 regional at Minnesota, that's another stacked regional. You had Minnesota, who ended up going to the World Series with Amber Pfizer. Georgia was loaded with their offense. North Dakota State was a 4 with Darren Mueller. That's insane. And you got a lot of national attention because of the year Nicole was having, and really put your program from a national standpoint on the map. People knew who Drake was. What was it like to have all that national attention that year specifically, in part because of Nicole, but also the success there, and especially when you've got Amanda Scarborough, who's one of the main faces of covering softball, is covering your regional.
It was great for a school like Drake, just because we aren't typically in that spotlight that some of the other programs. And I think our staff and our kids handled it great. They had fun. I remember during one of the rain delays that we had there against Georgia, it was the elimination game, and eventually got pushed to Monday because we couldn't play on Sunday. But Saturday we were playing Saturday evening, and it was a tight ball game. And the lightning came and thunder, and obviously we're delayed. Eventually they postponed it the rest of the evening, but we were in a locker room next to Georgia on one side, and we were on the other side. And it was like church mice in the Georgia locker room. They weren't saying a word. They're quiet. Our kids were singing, dancing, and doing everything as loose as could be. And, and that's what I always remember about that team. We had some really good people on that team that they just enjoyed being around each other, and they had fun. And it was a great group. And obviously that team will go down as probably so far our best team we've ever had at Drake in terms of what they were able to accomplish. Yes, it was led by Nicole Newman, and she was a big factor, but we also had some other good players, and we had some seniors in Taryn Payne and Kennedy Frank and Gabby Jonas that had started a lot of ball games for us over those years. And then we go in and, we had Mandy Remick, who, will probably go down at this point as one of our greatest all-time offensive players ever to put on a Drake uniform. Was just a tough out, very tough out at the top of the order. And just played a solid shortstop. And, she was player of the year in our conference. I believe would have been the 18 season. And she had almost as good a year in 19 and only ended up with second team all conference that year, believe it or not, because of Sammy Bunch at Northern Iowa, who obviously is a pretty good player in her own right. Mandy Remick also was a 2-time academic All-American as well. And so, that's probably, looking back, is what I'm most proud of is what they can accomplish in the classroom, because ultimately you leave here with a degree from Drake University, and you're going to have some good memories. But most importantly, we've set you up for the rest of your life.
She's now in coaching, Coach Newman. Now we got to call her. She's going to be an assistant at Creighton. What advice are you going to give her?
Breathe, slow down. Not every day is going to be great, as you know, but you're in something that you love. And that's what's most important. And, I learned a long time ago that, I could make a lot more money in a lot of other aspects as far as working environment. And I probably could have at some point if I decided to leave Drake and go somewhere else, that I've had some opportunities. But you know what? If you love what you're doing, money doesn't really mean much. I've had a great career of doing something that I've loved. And I think, you look at Brynne Dordel, we go back to her being in coaching, and, what she's done is she's kind of moved from school to school. I'll go back, and I think my jaw is still on the ground when she came in, and she was an academic All-American for us, 4.0, never had a B in her life, was all set to work up in accounting firm up in Minneapolis, where she was from, had interned there, was probably starting out making 6 figures, and she comes in and goes, "Coach, I think I want to coach." I go, "Huh?" Because I would have been like the last person, because she was so focused on what she'd wanted. And she goes, I don't see myself in a cubicle the rest of my life. I want to go out and, I think I want to try this coaching thing. Yes, I'm leaving a lot of money on the table, but I want to do something that I think I would love doing. And then all these years later, she's still doing it, and it's worked out great for her. And so, Nicole Newman's another one that obviously was at University of Minnesota the last couple of years, has gotten an opportunity to start at University of Creighton, and or actually it's Creighton University. And, I see her just kind of stair stepping it up, and she's got a great passion for the game. She's learned a lot through our pitching coach, Tina D'Angelo, and she'll take some other experiences that she's had. She's had a cup of coffee here in the Alliance League over in Chicago. 2 years ago, obviously she played in the MPF, and so obviously I'm sure she's trying to gather some information where she's had some teammates that obviously are great pitchers. I think she'll do a great job, but the bottom line is you still got to be patient, and there's always, anytime you take 2 steps forward, a lot of times you always take a step back, and you just got to keep remembering that.
Couple last things. I want to ask you about the Valley. Last couple of years, full years, multiple bid league. Last season, Northern Iowa gets in, Southern Illinois winning the tournament. Illinois State had a strong argument. They won the regular season. They could have easily been in and made it a 3-bid league. 2019, when you got in, Southern Illinois got in as an at-large. Just speak to the league and the depth of the league now. It's become now where I've talked to coaches in the league, it feels that the expectation is to be a multiple bid league, and you're starting to get that respect. Missouri State was in the mix as well last year. Just talk about the league overall.
It's a great league. We've had coaches, if you look at our coaches that have been in the league, we've had some that have been in for a long time. We talked about Melinda Fischer. She's still going. Holly Hesse, Carrie Blaylock. Those are kind of the deans of our conference. I guess you'd have to throw me in there now. Ryan Jacobs obviously has been there a while. Amy Hayes at Bradley has had some really good teams in there. We got a couple of younger coaches in terms of Valparaiso and Loyola. Mike Pericello at Indiana State is starting to put together a pretty good team over there year in, year out. But yeah, the depth of our conference is getting better and better every year. I look at least our top half are very competitive and compete with anybody at any time. If we throw our top ace out there, they're going to keep us. They're going to keep them in the ball game. And I mean, you look at some of the players and Sammy Bunch. What she meant and how great of a player she was. Carrie Blaylock down at Southern has had some really good players. They're always going to be in the mix. Melinda Fischer, they took a hit this past year with obviously losing 2 pitchers that could be returning. And so it's, those teams are always going to be there year in, year out. Southern Illinois State, I'd like to put Drake in there, Northern Iowa, Missouri State. Those are probably the 5 that have always, for the most part, there might be a year or 2 that they slip a little bit, but they're always going to be in that top 3 mix almost every year. Then you throw in a Bradley that can always make a run in the tournament. They're always good for that. Loyola, I think they're going to get better and better as she gets a little bit farther along with the program. Valparaiso obviously is going over with the coaching change. Evansville, he's kind of built a nice program there. He's got some great offensive players, obviously maybe a pitcher away yet from really being in the mix on a consistent basis. It's a challenging league every year. And yes, I think that we should be a multiple team league as far as when it comes to postseason. And but we still got to go out there and produce. I know the schedule, Illinois State always plays a brutal preseason schedule to try to get them in the mix. I think that we're getting up there. That year of that 2019 year, we had this #1 strength of schedule heading into conference play. And, last year, I think we were number 9 heading into somewhere around there that we were in strength of schedule. I don't know if I had quite the team to be playing that, but, you're going out and you're trying to compete against the heavy Power 5s that hopefully put you in a good position come conference play. Plus, I think it's our right as a conference affiliate of the Missouri Valley to do our part and try to play those schools that, one, is going to help our conference as a whole have a better RPI, which in turn should help us get some at-large bids.
Last question. To compete for the conference title in 2022 and get back to the tournament and accomplish all your goals internally, what are some of the keys for your team to accomplish between now and then, and maybe some of the questions you have to answer?
Well, we talked about it earlier. Pitching is going to be number one. You know, I like our offense. Our offense has been pretty steady over the years. We're not going to hit the ball out of the ballpark. That's not kind of our style. Our style is to kind of put the ball in play and create and put pressure on the defense. You know, draw some walks. We probably didn't draw as many walks as I would like to last year, but I think our offense is going to be good. We just need a couple pitchers to step up and take the reins and be what I think they can be. The other area is with any program is to stay healthy. You know, at least the right players to stay healthy, and you know, continue to get better. You know, like I said earlier, we have 21 players, and this is a new challenge, not only for myself, but for our team, because those that have been here in the past have never had that many. So obviously, does that take playing time away from somebody? Makes you compete a little bit more. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm real excited about, you know, what the fall has left to bring here in terms of getting out and getting some outside competition against us. And then, you know, head in after we finish the Big Four, let's see what we need to work on. What are some of the individual stuff that we need to work on? And then, okay, then we open up at the Unidome in the Northern Iowa tournament that has the likes of Iowa State and Nebraska and South Dakota State, which, you know, they've come on like gangbusters. You know, you talk about a mid-major program that is as good as anybody right now. I'd put them up there. They got some great pitching along with some other very talented players around. So, you know, that's right there is a really good tournament to start out with. And then, you know, then we're going to go to Baton Rouge down to LSU and play Lafayette and LSU. And then we go to Kentucky for the weekend. And then we're going to go to Austin, Texas the weekend after that. So, you know, we're visiting, you know, which we typically do. That's what the schedule that we try to put together. And yeah, if we could keep our head above water and win games, and then hopefully that gets us a little bit more tested for the conference. And hopefully we're in a good spot come into the year.
That's an incredible non-conference schedule you just threw in there. Wow, that's amazing. But I'm not going to even get into that because you got a lot of work between now and then. But that is amazing stuff. Coach, this has been awesome. We wanted to have you on for a little while. It's been a pleasure to see your teams play over the years, and congrats on the success you've had to this point. Good luck this fall as well as this upcoming season, and thanks a lot for taking the time from a busy schedule to join us.
Eric, thank you so much, and thank you for what you do for our sport. You know, we're finally becoming a national brand for our sport as far as what is happening across the country, and it's the likes of you and others that have helped us do that for us. So again, thank you for having me, and stay safe out there.